Great. Many thanks. Thanks to Roche and Alzheimer Europe for the invitation and this opportunity to feedback a little bit more of the results of this survey. In this presentation, I'm focusing on, because of the topic of the symposium, on some of the gender issues that have emerged from that. So, very quick reminder for those who either weren't in the plenary or were enjoying a well-earned nap, that it's 5 national organisations from Scotland, Finland, Netherlands, Italy and the Czech Republic. These were all family carers supporting a family member or friend who's received a diagnosis of dementia. They had to be living in one of the 5 countries. The survey was available online and in paper. We aimed for 200 respondents in each country. We exceeded that. There were differences in the balance of online and paper versions. And just to emphasize again, this is not a representative sample of carers. This is, if you like, a convenient sample. They're people who are probably better educated and more likely to be in contact with Alzheimer organisations. So, if anything, these are a resourceful sample. There are differences between the countries. In Italy, Czech Republic, we had more sons and daughters providing care. This meant the age was younger of the carers in Italy. Very well college educated in Scotland and the Netherlands. More sharing of the care in the Italy and the Czech Republic. And more people had now gone into residential care in Netherlands and Czech Republic. But of course the key finding or the key aspect of the sample in relation to the topic of our discussion today is the preponderance of females. And as I said, this may be, in fact, slightly higher than one would find in a representative sample. 83% were female, the carers. And of course, if one compares male and female carers, what one finds is that the balance of relationships is slightly different, that the male carers are more likely to be looking after their spouse. The female carers are more likely to be a daughter looking after a parent. So the thing I'm going to focus on, I guess, in this presentation is very much the emotions and feelings that people reported. And we asked them to report their feelings, firstly, looking back in the period immediately after the diagnosis was disclosed. We said the first 2 weeks. And then we asked them to report on their feelings and emotions now. On average, this was about 4 years after the diagnosis was made, but you may recall there was quite a range of that. Most, or half the people were in the last 4 years. The predominant feelings immediately after the diagnosis were understandable. Worries about the future, uncertainty about the implications, and quite a high proportion, just under 40%, reported feelings of sadness or depression. This is not a clinical depression scale. This is just people reporting on the sort of feelings that they had from a long list of 15 or 16 positive and negative emotions. If we look at how that breaks down in relation to gender, there were some quite interesting differences, I think, in terms of those feelings immediately after the diagnosis. Male carers tended to report more acceptance, more optimism, and twice as much resignation, although these are small numbers there. Female carers tended to report more anger, although it's a small proportion, it's clearly greater than it is for males. More sadness and depression, more worries about the future, more despair, more panic, more shock, more mixed feelings, and also more relief. And I think Jane Goodrick referred to that this morning, that there could be relief following a diagnosis. So quite a number of differences in the sort of emotions that male and female carers report in those 2 weeks after the diagnosis. Then if we switch forward to how people report feeling about the diagnosis now, worried about the future is still a predominant feeling. Uncertainty about the implications has gone off the picture now. Much more acceptance. Sadness and depression still pretty prominent. Again, if we look at the gender differences here, Males are still reporting more resignation. Females still reporting more anger, more sadness and depression. That's quite a big difference now. And more despair. So you get a picture perhaps of the sorts of differences, and of course these may not be differences in relation to caregiving specifically. It may be that males and females report how they feel in different sort of ways, using different terms and different languages, and construe their experience differently. But then if we think about how the service responded, or services, how did they actually respond to these very powerful feelings? And one of the things we did was to ask people, were they offered counselling or emotional support in the 6 months after the diagnosis? And I looked at those who reported sadness or depression immediately after the diagnosis. And what we found is that 18% of male carers who had those feelings did actually use a service offering counselling and emotional support in those 6 months. 12%, a smaller number, of female carers used such a service, even though, if you remember, there were more female carers reporting sadness and depression. So there's a mismatch between the response and the feelings people were reporting. A third of male carers would have liked to have used such a service, but it wasn't offered. And half of female carers would have liked to use such a service, but it wasn't offered. So the female carers, there seemed to be more unmet need than for the male carers. We also looked at people's report now of whether or not caring made them feel lonely. And what we found is that females were more likely to report feelings of loneliness related to caregiving. Now, you remember there were different relationship types, so I've looked at this specifically for those who are spouse carers. And it seems that for spouses, those differences are particularly strong. That's where the difference is between them. 56% of male spouses report loneliness, 66% of female spouses report loneliness. And there's a relationship, of course, between those who feel sad and depressed now and those who report caregiving loneliness. We also asked people about this thing that's often reported about people tending to stay away once they know somebody has dementia. And here we found that half of female carers agreed with this, rather more than the male carers. Less of a difference among the spouses. And again, this was associated with feeling lonely related to caregiving. So the majority of those who agree with this statement, that people tend to stay away, also agree or strongly agree that they feel lonely. So the loneliness feeling seem to relate to that feeling that people are keeping away from us now there is dementia. So to conclude, carers are reporting a wide range of emotions in the immediate aftermath of the diagnosis, from relief to despair, from acceptance to anger. Worries about the future, uncertainty about the implications are prominent. But then, as months and years intervene, acceptance increases, worries about the future reduce, but they remain the most frequently indicated feeling. Sadness and depression remain at reasonably high levels, and feelings of despair are reported by a substantial number of carers. The majority of carers are female, and this emotional impact reflects their experience as well as that of the smaller number of male carers. They seem to be at greater risk of experiencing powerful emotions like anger and panic and sadness and depression and despair. There's an unmet need for emotional support and counselling, especially for female carers. Feelings of loneliness are common, especially in spouse carers. They're associated with sadness and depression and with that feeling that people are staying away. And because our population is well educated, they're in touch, they're more resourceful, I think these are even more powerful findings. So again, thanks to the organisations and to Alzheimer Europe and all the carers who participated. Thank you.